I make these videos to try and sell our cars, to show customers what they're going to be like. They have proved very, very popular. Unfortunately, one of the byproducts is that it would seem that everybody wants to tell me how I should drive, how I should sit, where I should put my hands on the steering wheel, how far my arms should be from the steering wheel, and where my wrist should be. But I like to reply to comments. However, I thought it would probably be best for me to make a video so that I could just send a link rather than reply and keep typing out the same thing over and over again. My granddad taught me to drive on an abandoned airfield in Wales when I was a child, and before I could even reach the pedals myself. I used to sit on his knee, I'd steer, and when he told me to, I'd change gear, he'd press the clutch. When I was 12, I got a job at a garage just down the road from here. We had about 45 cars. They used to be parked around the back to save vandalism. As I say, I was 12. The salesman used to come in late and was pretty lazy, so I used to get the cars out, which involved driving them from round the back, over the ramp through the workshop, and displaying them on the front. So I got pretty used to steering and driving and clutch control and so on, long before it was legal for me to drive. Then I'd have to do the same thing in reverse at night, put them round the back. That was on private property, and it was a long, long time ago, so I'm sure that if I did anything illegal, then it was the statute of limitations is now run out. It's 48 years ago, so I think I'm pretty safe in releasing that to the world. I took my driving test on the morning of my 17th birthday at 11 o'clock, I think it was. I had one driving lesson, and that was so that the guy could show me where the test centre was and go with me, so it looked like I did know what I was doing. So I had an hour before my driving test. That hour was spent, I think it was a chap called Jeff Drinkwater. That hour was spent with him telling me that I'd got too many bad habits. Bear in mind, this was the first day I could drive. I used to drive with my elbow on the door card, and I was too far back, and all sorts of things. And he basically said, like, God loves a trier. You've got no chance of passing your test. However, I can remember him saying that you should sit, you should drive with your hands at 2:45. You should be in a position where your wrist can touch the top of the steering wheel. But why? Why do you need to put your hands at the top of the steering wheel when you drive at 2:45? It doesn't make sense to me. And as I say, I'm not a driving instructor. These are my thoughts and my thoughts only. But the way I see it is that when the driving position was first thought, when I first started driving cars, you couldn't even move the seat backwards and forwards. It was bolted to the floor. So you had to adapt your body to fit the car. Nowadays, we've got height adjustable steering wheel, height adjustable seats, reach adjustable steering wheel, the door mirrors. So you set the car and you build it round the way you want to sit, not have to adapt yourself to sit in the vehicle. And I took my driving test in my dad's Opel Record 1.9 Berliner. No power steering or anything like that. You had to do a 3-point turn in those days. No power steering. It was quite difficult. So to the people who keep messaging me to say that they think I should sit closer to the steering wheel, please take note. This is what I think. Firstly, the wide-angle view of the GoPros exaggerate the distance that I appear to be from the steering wheel. But also please bear in mind that the ideal driving position was thought up probably when cars were invented to get new learner drivers into some sort of average position to where everything was in reach. And of course it wasn't as easy in those days. This was the days before inertia reel seat belts allowed you to move. You were jabbed in. once you've got your seatbelt on, there was no moving forward with your inertia reel belt, like you can these days. You were stuck there. If that's your position, you were stuck there, so you couldn't reach forward to get anything. So you had to be within reach. You couldn't move. In fact, there was no such thing as height and reach adjustable steering wheel, like so. You had to adapt. No such thing as adjustable seat backs. It was set at a kind of a 90-degree angle. That was it. No power steering, no ABS, no traction control, brake assist. With no power steering, you had to sit as close to the steering wheel as you possibly could, I suppose, because you needed all your upper body strength to turn the steering wheel, basically like this is now, with no power on and no engine switched on. You needed all your strength, and if you were one of the people that couldn't quite grasp that it was a lot easier to turn the steering wheel if you were actually creeping forward slowly or reversing back slowly, then you really didn't need all your upper body strength. With the invention of speed sensitive power steering, you can now turn a steering wheel from lock to lock with less effort than it used to take us to dial a number on an old phone. You can do it with you can do it with your finger, like so, one finger. And because the old rack and pinion steering had such a poor pulley effect, input to output ratio, you had to be able to shuffle your hands around the steering wheel as if you were coiling a hose pipe, and if you didn't, you wouldn't make it round a shallow curve, let alone a 90-degree corner. Nowadays, half a turn of a steering wheel equates to a sharp right angle turn. Inefficient drum brakes with asbestos lining material, which was prone to glazing, meant that you needed to transfer all the muscle power from your calves and thighs, forcing yourself against the seat back in order to transfer enough pressure through the brake pedal to create the friction required to scrub off speed and bring you to a standstill, even from relatively slow speeds, especially if it had been raining and you were on cross-ply tyres. Fortunately, in those days, the clutch was just as bad. Before hydraulic systems with the clutch servo were invented, cars had a big fork in the gearbox attached to a clutch pedal by a cable. Depending on how well lubricated and unfrayed the clutch cable was, and where the fulcrum was and how long the fork was, depended on how easy it was to depress the clutch. If you're lucky, it would take about the same pressure to change gear as it would to brake, otherwise you'd end up with one leg bigger than the other. Gearboxes didn't have synchromesh then, so you had to, what they referred to as double declutch, which was effectively change or press the clutch in twice to change gear once. Now, in my opinion, the closer you are to the steering wheel, the wider the angle of vision the windscreen A-pillar obscures. From here, where I sit, I can see the grey car over there. If I move closer, that car's totally obscured. That can mean the difference between life and death of an oncoming motorcyclist. And take it from me, as a biker who's spent more than his fair share of time flying through the air or sliding along the gravel on my arse. This is a major consideration for me. I want to be able to see everything around me. I don't want any blind spots. I sit as far away from the steering wheel as I can. The nearer you are, the more restricted your elbows are, like so. You're more vulnerable from a side impact. If a car hits you there and your elbow's there, then you're going to get elbowed. The steering wheel's not going to deform. It's going to be your wrist, your elbow, or your collarbone that's going to give from a side impact if the door comes in. The closer you are to the steering wheel, the less chance you have of moving your legs back if you are in an impact. And believe me, I have been in a couple where I've had to bring my legs back. If you're stuck there, your legs hit the steering wheel. You can't pull away. There's also airbags now. If you've got a knee airbag, then your knees have to be at least, or recommended at least 100 millimeters away. If you've got a big bunch of keys dangling from the steering wheel and the airbag goes off underneath, then you're going to get a key through your kneecap. The less you can bend your legs, the more likely you are to sustain ankle and knee damage in a frontal impact. That's if you're lucky and you don't have your thigh bones shoved back through your pelvis. The airbag deploys at between 110 to 220 miles per hour. So the nearer you are to that, the more facial and chest damage you're going to get. If you drive with your hands at the 2:45 position, with your thumbs through the steering wheel, they're going to get broken if you're in a side or 3/4 impact collision. The first thing they tell you on a racing course is do not feed the steering wheel through your hands. Do not take your hands off the steering wheel at all, or else you have no idea which direction the front wheels are pointing. They're pointing over there. Steering wheel straight, but the wheels are pointing over there. So you've no idea. So basically on a racetrack, it's like so. And that's it, that's all you need. However, in modern cars, due to the airbag, if you cross your hands on the steering wheel, which that I am guilty of, I do it all the time and I shouldn't do. You cross your hands on the steering wheel and you're in a collision and the airbag goes off, you are going to get punched in the face with your own broken arm. An average punch is 2.5 miles an hour. A trained boxer, average punch is 25 miles per hour. The fastest punch recorded in the Guinness Book of Records is 45 miles an hour. You're going to get your own arm in your face at 220 miles an hour. So I'm going to try and stop crossing my arms on the steering wheel. But even so, that takes me back to, why do you have to touch the top of the steering wheel with your wrist? Why do you have to be able to touch the top of the steering wheel? Because if you touch the top of the steering wheel and the airbag goes off, you're going to get whacked. There's no need to sit close enough to be able to do that. That's how you should steer, so that the centre of the steering wheel is completely clear, and if the airbag goes off, it's going to come through the centre and protect you here. The figures, if you read the handbooks for cars these days, it tells you need to sit at least 25 centimetres from the centre of the steering wheel. That at least, not 25 centimetres, it says at least. That's the only thing. And if I sit where I'm comfortable, I can touch everything. I can touch the dashboard with my hands. If I want to, I can reach forward. I'm very, very comfortable here. There's plenty of room. I'm 100 millimeters away from there, from a side airbag. My knees are 100 millimeters away from the knee airbag, and I'm comfortable. I'm very, very comfortable. I can put the clutch in, no problem. I can brake, no problem. I can do everything. I'm comfortable in this position. And to be honest, I bet that I was a better driver than 90% of you, at least, out there. That might be a bit conceited. In this Skoda handbook, I'll just cut the things into you, but it says you should drive in a relaxed position that does not cause drowsiness. Honestly, if I was to drive, I couldn't. It would be too claustrophobic for me to be any closer to the steering wheel. I don't want to be any closer. It says, if the driver and passengers assume an incorrect sitting position, they may sustain severe injuries. It's important for the driver and front passenger to maintain a distance of at least 25 centimetres from the steering wheel or dash panel. If you fail to observe the minimum distance, the airbag will not protect you. It won't have deployed fully, so it'll still be inflating. The idea is it's already deployed and cushions your blow, not hits you flat in the chest at 220 miles an hour. Risk of fatal injury. The distance between the driver and the steering wheel, or between the front passenger and the dash panel, should always be as great as possible. When driving, hold the steering wheel with both hands firmly on the outer edge in the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock position. Never hold the steering wheel in the 12 o'clock position or in any other way, which possibly again I'm guilty of. Steering wheels these days, 2:45 there. Now, if you put your thumbs through the wheel and you hit anything, your thumbs are going to break. There's that little bit there is for your thumbs. So that's how you drive. And then the worst thing that happens, if you do hit something, you hit a brick or something even, it will knock the steering wheel through your hands and you don't sustain brakes. So in closing, you drive where you want and I'll drive where I want. But in all my years giving people test drives, one thing has become blatantly obvious to me. The closer that somebody sits to a steering wheel, the worse the driver they are. Thanks for watching. You're welcome. Have a Merry Christmas and a happy 2019. And stay away from accidents. And I'll try to do the same. So, a number of years ago, it was my day off and my girlfriend and I were going to go to the Trafford Centre. We were in no particular hurry. My girlfriend came to pick me up and she stopped here, and just before I got in she told me that a windscreen washer fluid was running low. So I went in the garage, got some, filled the windscreen washer up, and we set off. And it's kind of a sliding door thing. If we'd have set off earlier, a few minutes before, this would never have happened. But we went in her car as well. So we set off from the garage here. And they say most accidents happen within 100 yards from home and you should always put your seatbelt on and so on. We both had our seatbelts on. I don't drive particularly fast, but what I do, whenever I've had a demonstrator in the past, and it takes ages to get your seat just in the right position, and first thing people do when they go out in your car is change your seat position. So I'd get in at night and the seat be all over the place and you're trying to get it back comfortable and so on. So I try not to do that to other people. When I jump in their cars to do a test drive, a road test, when they come to have it valued, I always try and just adapt to the way they sit, so as I don't spoil it for them. And I do the same with my girlfriend. She's a little bit shorter than me and quite a bit shorter than me, and she sits closer to the steering wheel. Comfortable, nothing wrong with the driving position for her size, I must say that. So I jumped in the car and I decided, as I always did, I wouldn't move the seats. So I was closer than I would normally be. So we set off from here. As I say, at a leisurely pace. We'd plenty of time to get there, all day to go shopping. And there was a wagon in front of us here. Wagon's turning left, we're turning left. I'm just pottering along. The wagon's still in front of us. Good distance between us. And then all of a sudden, just as we're approaching a junction up here, the wagon slams its brakes on and pulls over to the side of the road. Now you can see it was just like it is today here, except there was no cars there. So the wagon pulls over here. I'm stuck here. There's cars coming that way, so I moved into the centre of the road to go past it as soon as the cars come. Unfortunately, I could see there in the wagon driver's mirror the back of his head, which meant that he was looking over there. He set off back at an alarming rate, very, very fast. I'll just have to move out here. He set off reversing back. He'd missed that turning. I was already behind him, too close, because I was going to overtake him. He hadn't seen me. So I slammed my girlfriend's Golf in reverse and set off back. Unfortunately, there was a car waiting to come out of that junction there, and there was cars there waiting for a space to get past this lorry. I went back as far as I could. I couldn't go anywhere else, otherwise I'd have just reversed into the car that was parked there. The lorry hit us a hell of a force. I don't know what he thought he was doing. He must have just been in a bad temper. Hit us a hell of a force. Now, I had at that time my foot on the brake and somehow my hand on the gear stick in reverse. We were hit by the lorry. I was wearing this watch, which, believe me, there's no giving it. I've worn this watch probably every day for 25 years at some stage. So, if you can see my wrist there, that bit there was forced into my hand there, and this bit didn't give, so my wrist did. Beautiful, isn't it? Also, because I had my foot on the brake and I was sat really close, there was no give. I didn't get knocked back, but my leg got knocked back into my hip or pelvis, which still hurts to this day. My left foot went down the side of the clutch, and the clutch stuck into my leg here and scraped all the way up because I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of the way. I was here. If I'd have been sat in my normal position, I'd have just braced for impact, like they tell you in planes. That would have been my natural reaction. My girlfriend, she had a seatbelt on. The force of the impact, she submarined underneath the seatbelt and basically not fully ended up down in the footwell, but she was out and she had a seatbelt graze over her face, bruises on her knees where she'd hit the dash. Now, the seat belts didn't deploy because we were going backwards, and the lorry hit us and speeded us up. We didn't stop, we speeded up. So I'm assuming that's why they didn't go off. So basically, don't give me any aggravation about where I sit. 2 years, which basically nearly destroyed my business because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't sleep. My wrist was dislocated. I couldn't lift anything up. I couldn't even wring a chamois leather out. So it cost me a fortune, and it cost me probably 5, 6, 7 times more in expenses than I was to get back off the insurance company. So when people tell me to sit in a different place, and I mean that in the nicest way,